Good evening, everybody. It is bye-week Thursday. This is Pulse of the Pack here. I'm your host, Jacob Westendorf, with good friend of the show, Zach Jacobson of Packer Report. Zach joining me from sunny California, home of now three-time American League Most Valuable Player Mike Trout. And I only bring that up because you're wearing an Angels jersey, but it is not a Mike Trout jersey. It's actually blank. There's nothing on it. But how are we doing tonight?
I'm good. I mean, not really anymore. If I knew you were going to put me on blast, I would have taped a nameplate on the back and written Trout on it, put the number 27 right there. At least make it look official. But
yeah, I've got some friends that do some embroidery, so you might be able to find something like that.
Cool. Send them my number. Hook me up.
Yeah, there we go. I will do that. So speaking of hookups, that's kind of what we're talking about tonight, quarterbacks and wide receivers, namely focusing on the wide receiver group. It was a hot button issue coming into the season. The Packers are 8-2. You can almost argue, some might argue, in spite of their receivers. But there was that 4-game stretch without Davante Adams. That was kind of the go-to line was, what happens if Davante Adams rolls an ankle and has to miss 3-4 games? Would they win a game in his absence? And they did. They went 4-0 in that time. Something that helped with that was obviously the emergence of the running backs with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams in the passing game. But outside of that, kind of a mixed bag. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Allen Lazard, Geronimo Allison. And that's where I want to start, is Geronimo Allison, because that was like the veteran guy that a lot of people were saying was, he was off to a good start last season. You know, he could do a few different things for the team. And it just hasn't looked natural. They run a lot of stuff with him, like around the line of scrimmage, asking him to use short area quickness that he frankly doesn't have. His thing, I think, putting him in his best position to succeed is as your fourth, possession type wide receiver, finding holes in his zone. He runs a pretty solid slant route, some in-cutting type stuff. But other than that, I mean, there's just hasn't been a whole lot with Allison. What were your expectation levels for him coming into the season? And obviously, based on that, we'll know. But where has he fallen in regards to that?
I think you got to hit it on the head. He's kind of like that fourth guy you can kind of trust in third down situations. And he has been that guy ever since, kind of 2017, where he really kind of came into his own. But my expectations for him coming into the season were relatively high, especially considering the Packers passed on adding a wide receiver in free agency back in the spring. They passed on drafting a wide receiver. So it was pretty obvious that their expectations for Geronimo Allison were really high too, and they expected him to contribute significantly to this offense in a new offense with Matt LaFleur, a system that's going to put guys in position to succeed, like you mentioned. And he's kind of fallen short in that. He had quite a few drops in the first couple months of the season. He hasn't been very reliable in those aforementioned kind of third down situations where they need that possession guy. And I mean, he's supposed to be, like you said, the veteran guy of the group. He knows that when Rodgers breaks out of the pocket, which hasn't been that that often this season, just because he's playing more from the pocket in this offense. He's the guy that is able to work back to the ball, kind of the same thing Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb did back in their heyday. They know that scramble drill means come back to the ball, and Geronimo Allison was really good at that. So I think just the way the Packers are now kind of letting Aaron Rodgers play from the pocket, you're seeing less and less of that, and that means less opportunities for Allison to do something that he was actually, good at. Now it's those short kind of intermediate routes that you can't really get from him at this point. He's never that guy. He's a tall, kind of lanky dude. He isn't quick, but he knows how to find holes in zone. He knows how to get open. He's just, in my opinion, he just kind of fell short of expectations. Doesn't mean he's had a bad year, but considering what their wide receiver room looked like coming into the season and how high they were on him and, the rest of those guys there, I think you could say he's underperformed at this point.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think you touched on something there, the reliability aspect of if you're not going to be athletic and kind of – I mean, there are plenty of players, you can see it, that make up for missed assignments, reliability issues, if you will, with athleticism. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is an example of that. He can not run a perfect route, but he's so damn fast that he might beat his guy off the line anyways. Davante Adams kind of got through that early in his career as well, where he wasn't perfect with his footwork and everything, but athletic enough to make up for it. And Allison isn't athletic enough to make up for those things, dropped passes and things like that too. And that's something, the Vikings game that finished at 21-16, that entire game turned. Dalvin Cook has a big touchdown run. It's 21-7. The Packers are driving again to answer, and Allison fumbles. That at least keeps it from being 24-7, at worst, 28-7 at best, and really opens the door for Minnesota to get back in the game. So that's been a problem. I think that if Green Bay is looking at next season and beyond, that is kind of the receiver spot that for certain can be upgraded from. As we go down the stretch here, and I'll get to this at the end, I think there's a better way to use all these guys. But we went from disappointing. Now let's go to surprising, because I think the guy that I don't know if anybody expected this. I mean, even his mom probably couldn't have. But Allen Lazard has become, and granted, the numbers aren't gaudy. It's not like he scored 3-4 touchdowns or had a huge game like that. But he's had some really nice moments. The touchdown against Detroit on Monday Night Football is one that could be used as an example. He's really become a guy that you can tell, I think, having watched Aaron Rodgers play for about 10 years now, when he breaks the pocket, the guys he throws to are the guys he trusts. That's who he's trying to find. So more often than not, that's Davante Adams when he breaks the pocket. But this past Sunday against Carolina, 2 separate occasions, he throws the ball to Allen Lazard. What was your thought? I mean, did you have him on your final 53-man roster? I know you like other big, tall wide receivers, so it seems like somebody that you might easily fall in love with. But if you didn't, how surprising is it that he's gotten to this point?
Well, first of all, Michael Clark is better than anybody on this roster right now. So let's just kind of get that out of the way really quick.
Seems fair.
Second of all, I'm sorry, what was the question? I got kind of lost in thinking of Michael Clark.
In the glow of Michael Clark, I understand.
In the glow of Michael Clark, yeah. You referenced him, so you kind of just threw me off here.
Yeah, I asked for that to happen. No, when did you have Lazard making your final 50 or your initial?
Right, okay,
53?
yeah. No, I didn't actually. I had them rolling with Adams, MVS, Allison, Trevor Davis, and Darius Shepard. I think there might have been someone else.
Probably
Whatever.
EQ if maybe the designated to return kind of thing with him.
That might have been, yeah. They kind of surprised me with the whole, the way they did it. I didn't think he would be gone for the entire year, but they stashed him on IR beforehand. Yeah, no, I didn't have him making the roster. So you could definitely say that he's just been a total pleasant surprise. I know my friend Grant on Twitter, he's super high on Allen Lazard, and he has been since the Packers picked him up last year. He definitely has just been kind of like a guy that, what was he doing at the bottom of the depth chart? When he finally did get those snaps, against the Lions, and he hauled in that deep left sideline pass from Rodgers, came down with it for the touchdown. That kind of made you realize, hey, this guy should be getting more reps. And eventually, he did get more reps throughout the week. Week by week, he was seeing more and more of the offense. I think it was against the Chargers that he kind of decreased a little bit, which was kind of surprising to me. I know there's kind of matchup issues that the Packers are probably want to take advantage of, but yeah, no, he was not on my 53. I did not see him having this kind of impact this year.
Yeah, and it's really been a nice surprise because the Packers, still, I don't think anybody could look at this receiving core and say that they feel really, really good. Like when Green Bay had Jordy Nelson, they had Randall Cobb, or they had Davante Adams, or, just a sure second wide receiver. And now, I think that everybody would be lying to you if they said they felt good about what they have there currently. But, the reality is these are the guys they have. These are the guys that they're going to have to go to battle with here for the postseason run that they hope to be making here. And at 8-2, as of right now, they have a 95% chance to make the playoffs. So Lazard has definitely been a pleasant surprise. The other one, the low-hanging fruit, the guy that everybody was picking on offense as the leap, if you will, is Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And it hasn't come to fruition. They've hit one deep ball for a touchdown, and that was against Denver, and it came on a free play, so it almost kind of feels like it doesn't really count. He's been playing injured, it feels like, since that Monday night game that we mentioned against Detroit. But some inconsistencies there for sure. He had a really big game against the Raiders where he had 2 catches and out sprint. It's actually really fun. I will say this. When he gets out in the open field, it is fun to watch him just run. and outrun everybody to the end zone. And he was able to do that against Oakland on a simple out route. What are your thoughts so far this season? Because Valdez-Scantling is on pace to have a nice season, over 700 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns, about 50 catches. That's not a bad year, obviously, but it just feels like it really comes in spurts and is inconsistent. Is there something, or what more does he need to do in order to be a little bit more consistent for this team?
I think for a 5th-round pick, just this learning curve that he has to master, it's probably going to be a little more prolonged. We've seen, like you said, we've seen flashes, we've seen spurts. And I have notes here in my iPhone that I took up until the Raiders game. He had explosive plays. He had a 47-yard play against the Bears, 40-yard play against the Broncos, 26 yards against the Eagles, a 46-yarder against the Lions, and then that 74-yard play against the Raiders. So like you said, they come in spurts. He has that big playability where he is able to kind of just thread the needle down the seam. He's able to split the safety. He's able to go deep and beat guys. I think what we've seen too is Aaron Rodgers still hasn't adjusted to his speed. And I know that's kind of like the hot thing going around. When Aaron Rodgers targets him deep and misses him or overthrows him or underthrows him, he kind of really, the consensus is that Aaron Rodgers is still trying to get used to his speed. And I think eventually we're going to start seeing that. We're going to start seeing them connect on those long balls. We're going to start seeing them do so more consistently, because when you have a guy with his type of speed, you want him to play in your offense. You want him to not just be so one-dimensional. You want him to be able to run different types of routes. Like everything that scouts and stuff and Twitter scouts were all saying about DK Metcalf coming out of the draft this past year, you could argue is like all about MVS, because he seems really one-dimensional right now. Just that straight line speed. He hasn't really, I don't want to say he hasn't improved, but he hasn't improved to the point where it's like noticeable, where teams have to, scheme for him and kind of, be scared of him, to the point where he's able to run all types of routes. He just has that straight line speed. And right now, that may not be a bad thing for an offense that needs those explosive plays. It's just a matter of him and Rodgers forming that chemistry.
Yeah, that's the part that really is. He does have the big plays, and that part is nice, obviously. Nobody's going to complain with, it seemed like you just mentioned one explosive play per game comes from him. That being said, when you look at his stat lines, like the Bears game you mentioned, 1 catch, 48 yards. The Raiders game was 2 catches. It ended up over 100 yards because he had a 74-yarder in that game. And granted, I know there are some big play receivers. Deshaun Jackson used to be a master of it. 3 catches, 125 yards and a touchdown, and 2 50-yard plays in there. But that's kind of his job. I understand that. But the Packers are kind of asking him to be more than that. And maybe that was something that they should have thought of. But as of right now, the consistency level just isn't there at this point for Marquez Valdez-Scantling. The guys towards the bottom of the roster, Jake Kumerow has played a little. He scored a really nice touchdown against the Raiders where he walked on water down the sideline and fell into the end zone. That was pretty cool. He's kind of broken the lineup. Matt LaFleur's done something where, and I think it's taken some adjustment from Packers fans to kind of remember that LaFleur is going to do things different than Mike McCarthy did. So just because one receiver is in the game now, he's even rotated Devontae Adams in and out of the lineup to get certain matchups on the field and stuff like that too. Now, maybe that'll change as Adams fully recovers from the turf toe injury. But, sometimes, when we talk about starting receivers, on Sunday the starting quote-unquote receivers were Devontae Adams and Jake Kumerow. And that could be for matchup purposes. Kumerow is one of those guys. He is relatively steady. He's made some nice plays. He had a really nice catch on one of the best throws Aaron Rodgers has ever made that kind of got forgotten about because of Jamal Williams and that play in the back of the end zone. But the play rolling to his right where it kind of fishtailed away from the defender into Kumerow's hands, that was nice. Darius Shepard was here. He's no longer here. And Ryan Grant was signed, but I'm not sure. A lot of people are using the phrasing of, break glass in case of emergency kind of thing. Do you expect any impact from him whatsoever as the season progresses?
I really hope so, because when they signed him, I was kind of excited. Like when I saw that they had him in for a workout among, so was like, oh, I hope they pick up Ryan Grant. I feel like he would be, a good addition to that room. And now, reflecting over a month later, he still hasn't been active for a single game. Like he's had zero impact on anything. And I think, that may be correct. Maybe they're just kind of saving him for emergency. But I mean, this is the team who, like I said earlier, passed on a wide receiver in the draft, passed on a wide receiver in free agency, not exactly in that order. But are they going to be able to recognize when that emergency is? I mean, they didn't have Devontae Adams, their number one receiver, for a month. So how are they going to kind of really define what an emergency is? We really don't know at this point. Maybe when 2 or 3 wide receivers go down, I don't know. But even then, Matt LaFleur is just going to keep riding the offense through the running backs, like he has been, like he did during that 4-game stretch without Devontae Adams. So I really do hope at some point Ryan Grant contributes. I feel like we're all getting our hopes up for no reason because they're probably going to release him at some point for someone else. Maybe they activate someone from IR. I know EQ's done for the season. I doubt Raven Green comes back from that ankle injury.
Maybe Lane
really
Taylor. I mean, yeah.
I was thinking Lane Taylor, yeah, but
I mean,
that would make sense, especially for like a playoff run. You'd be playing cold football in January. You want to have those backup offensive linemen available. But yeah, I feel like his tenure in Green Bay probably isn't going to last long. Unlike the original Ryan Grant, the OG Ryan Grant.
Right. The original hero of Ryan Grant of the snow globe in 2007. Of course, that Ryan Grant had a Packers Hall of Fame type of career. This Ryan Grant, yeah, I'm with you. I don't think he is going to end up contributing. The Packers, I mean, something that is nice, and it is an adjustment. And I'm not saying that I don't think that they do need more from the position, because I do. But they don't need as much from the position as they did in 2000, previous years when Mike McCarthy was the coach, because the offense isn't as based around wide receivers. The personnel is a little bit more diverse, and we have a little bit of extra time, so I do want to go into the other pass catchers that I haven't been able to get into. But tight ends and running backs, their contribution in the passing game specifically. Jamal Williams has 5 receiving touchdowns. I think that's been phenomenal. Just the addition of the running backs. I know they've gotten away from it here in recent weeks with Devontae Adams coming back. I think that's something over the bye, though, that they're going to hit again. But it's almost like a foreign concept looking at these running backs to catch passes, because, I've often said, I wish Packers fans would leave Mike McCarthy alone. He got fired. He deserved to get fired. He's still one of the best coaches in the history of this team. Let it be. I understand that there are some things he did towards the end, specifically with Aaron Jones, that aren't a great look at this point. But I say all that to say, in McCarthy's offense, the running back really was just like a pass block and check down in case of emergency kind of thing. Whereas here, LaFleur is legitimately using his running backs as weapons in the passing game. Now, is that something that you think just what is your thoughts on the positivity of the Packers being able to use their backs like that in the passing game?
They're finally adapting to the modern NFL. You see teams kind of involving their running backs in the passing game all the time. You see the Saints doing it with Alvin Kamara and when they had Mark Ingram. I never thought in my lifetime I would see Aaron Jones running a Texas route out of the backfield. And it's like so beautiful to see. It's like it's fresh, because it was so rare that those types of things happen with Mike McCarthy. And it's not like you could run those types of routes with Eddie Lacy, maybe James Starks, but that running back tandem towards like the last few seasons of McCarthy's tenure, sans 2017 and 2018, they weren't able to do things like that. And you kind of did start seeing Aaron Jones get more involved in the passing game last year, but you wouldn't see him running routes as a receiver. You wouldn't see those types of things. And Aaron Rodgers will be the first one to tell you, like Jones and Williams, their route trees have expanded immensely. They've gotten so much better as receiving threats. So just having that available and being able, like LaFleur has shown, just as a first-year head coach, he has shown the ability to mold an offense around that game plan and around involving the running backs and using them as centerpieces. Like that's special and that's significant because that makes them so much less one-dimensional. And it's less dependency on your receivers, less dependency on a young guy like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who's still growing, less dependency on Devontae Adams, who is still maybe not 100% from that turf toe injury, less dependency on just that entire room as a whole. So everything kind of works in unison, and it so far has worked beautifully.
Yeah, it has. And I think that you mentioned the Texas route. I almost cried when it happened. Like, I couldn't believe that I actually saw it. I mean, it's been fun to see. You know, I've often wondered, it's something else. I'm a bit of a Ty Montgomery truther, so I've wondered what Ty Montgomery could look like in this offense. But again, I don't want to cry over spilled milk. But nonetheless, the running backs have been a great addition to this offense. I think Jamal Williams has been underrated. Underrated may not be the right word because I know fans do appreciate him, but maybe just a little underappreciated in terms of the impact he's brought, both as a runner and a pass in the passing game. Same goes for Aaron Jones, obviously, who is an All-Pro candidate.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to like the offseason or even last season when people got so upset that Mike McCarthy wanted to split carries between Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, and I understand, I get it. You have a running back with a hot hand like Aaron Jones, who week in and week out is just like dominating opposing defenses. But you still want to have that diversity. You still want to have that thunder and lightning punch. You know, when you have it available, you want to use it. You want to incorporate it into your offense. And now that Matt LaFleur is doing that, it's such a beautiful thing to see. And it's so refreshing because people are accepting it. You know, people enjoy seeing Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones split carries now, which is just like the polar opposite of how things seemed last season. So it's just interesting.
I actually have a story coming out for Packer Report tomorrow on the Packers running game and how they've kind of done some things a little bit different. So, see, my guy's interested. You see that? So that actually is an interesting transition. But I did notice, the split this year, and it's skewed a little bit because Jamal Williams did miss time with that concussion. But the split really is 2 Aaron Jones carries for 1 Jamal Williams carry. And I think that's about right. It was relatively even on Sunday. Actually, I think it was dead even on Sunday. I think they ended up both with 13 carries during the Carolina game on Sunday. They've been a godsend. And I think that when you make a list of – first of all, if you do offensive list of MVPs, Aaron Jones is number 1. With all due respect to Aaron Rodgers, I think he's played better than the numbers would indicate. But that being said, Jones has just been phenomenal. He's in your All-Pro conversations, your Pro Bowl conversations. I won't say MVP just yet, but he's in those kinds of conversations. And Jamal Williams is on that list as well because what he's done has helped this offense as well. And it's given the Packers he's one of those dudes that I think I made with Jason on Saturday. I said he's one of those guys, if he was a basketball player, we'd call him a glue guy. He's good at everything, not really great at anything other than post-game quotes and analogies because those are phenomenal. But on the field, not great at anything, but good at everything. And he's an easy guy to root for. So I'm enjoying this. We got a few minutes left here, so let's look at the tight ends real quick. An interesting spot. Mercedes Lewis, I am referring to him strictly as Big Dog now because I love that is all that Aaron Rodgers calls him is Big Dog. He's had some time on the field. Jimmy Graham, obviously, is a polarizing player. Actually, I don't even think polarizing is the right word. I think most Packers fans hate him. Fair or not.
He's downright hated, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it. He makes a lot of money, and he's not Jimmy Graham. Like, I understand that. I do think that he's played better down the stretch here in recent weeks. His run blocking certainly is night and day. So that's, if nothing else, that's a positive. And that is he ever going to block Rob Gronkowski? No. Can he give better effort like he has been in recent weeks? Yes. And he's completely bought into this coaching staff, and that is helpful. So I'm appreciative of that. Robert Tonyan has missed some time with a hip injury, and Jay Sternberger played 15 snaps on Sunday. And I noticed him. I was in the stands. And sometimes it's hard to notice stuff in the stands just because you're looking at certain things. And, I mean, I think most people in the stands have a tendency to ball watch. But I noticed Jay Sternberger, his ability as a run blocker, he gives effort, and he's quote-unquote, I think this is a Ross Uglum scouting term, good enough. And good enough is good enough in terms of being a move tight end in the passing game. Give me your thoughts real quick on Jimmy Graham and what you think he's been able to do to this offense. Because really, after week 4 against Philadelphia, he drops, or I shouldn't say drops, but he doesn't catch 2 touchdowns that could have tied the game. And a lot of fans were ready just to be done with it. Everything just sit him on the bench. We're talking about potentially like a phantom injury to not embarrass him down the stretch, and he's played better since. So tell me about that, and then tell me about what you think Jay Sternberger can add to this team, if anything, here down the stretch.
In week 1 in Chicago, I think it was Aaron Rodgers' first touchdown pass of the season, actually. Jimmy Graham boxed out a defender in the end zone like an ex-basketball player would. And as commentators will remind you, 37 times per game. I thought that would be a sign of things to come for Jimmy Graham in this offense this season. I was wrong. Now, does that mean he's been bad? No, not at all. Ever since that game against the Cowboys in Dallas, I've noticed as well his blocking has gotten so much more aggressive, so much more in tune. You know, he's not showing a lack of effort on plays. He's actually involved in the plays. And like you mentioned as well, he's bought into things. He looks like he is genuinely a part of this offense. Like he isn't just a body that they threw money at and expected him to go back to Jimmy Graham from New Orleans, or even his year in Seattle when he had double-digit touchdowns. He's not either version of those Jimmy Grahams. Not either one of those things. But he can still be just a helpful piece in this offense. And I had a story out about that a couple weeks ago, actually. It might have been 3 weeks ago. I don't know. But you can still put Jimmy Graham in positions to succeed. You know, you can still get production out of him. And we've seen that the last few weeks. He's made some nice plays. He made some nice catches, great blocking, just instinctive. And, you know, he nearly had that touchdown pass against the Panthers. He just couldn't get that left foot in bounds. It was super close. But yeah, he can get open, and he still has some freaking burners. He's still able to get some yak, as we like to call it, some yak. But yeah, and I think that's another pleasant surprise for me. You know, aside from Alan Lazard and, you know, kind of how that room shaped up the wide receivers, Jimmy Graham has been another nice surprise. Now, he hasn't been the guy that I personally expect him to be in his second season with the Packers, but he's been serviceable. You know, and to reiterate my point, you can put him in position to succeed. And I think that's what this offense does. Same thing can be said for Jay Sternberger. Even as a rookie, now that he's coming back from injury and gradually working his way back into the offense, he was never in it to begin with this season. But yeah, he also had some nice blocks in the running game. It's the same thing. You can put him in positions to succeed and kind of get some catches, kind of get some confidence under his belt. With a tight end, it's going to take a little longer for him to really kind of come into his own. And the best case scenario is that 3rd round pick they invested in Sternberger. He's their tight end of the future. That's the guy that Aaron Rodgers is going to finish his career with. You know, that athletic guy that can take the seam and kind of get open downfield. Now, that's wishful thinking maybe, but that's the expectation. So.
Yeah, Sternberger is the only tight end on this roster currently that is guaranteed to be on the roster next year. Mercedes Lewis, free agent. Robert Tonyan, never really been anything outside of a couple plays here or there. I know he's a preseason darling, but other than that. And then Jimmy Graham is a big cap hit, probably more likely to get cut than he is to be on next season's roster. So that'll be interesting to watch. The pass-catching unit as a whole, I think, has been relatively solid. Obviously, the Packers' offense has been better than I think you could have hoped for at this point in the season. They've had some really nice moments, and they've had some other moments that have been forgettable. So with that in mind, the Packers are 8-2. That is really what matters more than anything else, and that is going to do it for this edition of the show. So be sure to check us out. It's at Packer Pulse on Twitter. You can follow me personally. I am at Jacob Westendorf, and you can look at our YouTube channel. It's Pulse of the Pack. And Zach, where can we find your work? What are you doing? All those sorts of things.
You can find my new account at ZA Jacobson on Twitter, and I am also a Packer Report. You can find me there as well with our great team. And Jacob, are you going to tell the people your actual middle name?
Yeah, my middle name is Stinky.
Yeah.
So
okay. I just wanted you to make that
for those that followed the Twitter joke, that is my middle name. So that's what we're going to go with.
Oh, it's not a Twitter joke. That's your actual name.
That's a real name. Yeah, it's on my birth certificate. So thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you indulging in our relative immaturity. And hopefully the bye week goes fast. Enjoy your guys' weekend, everything like that. And, of course, go Pack, go.